Once again, it's time to come on by and have a bite at the Crossroad Diner, a place where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. Let's see who's in the diner today. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Crossroad Diner. I've got a really fun guest with me today. This is my best friend from high school, and we are still very good friends. We go on road trips together, and we have the distinction of having crashed a Hollywood party together.
Mm-hmm.
And our motto is, we are on a mission
From
from
God.
God. Oh, man, I'll tell you how good a friend Tim is. He sent me a gift, and I'm going to try to see if you can recognize it. Can you read that, Timothy?
Actually, I think I know it by heart. The only thing better than a good friend is a good accomplice.
So that should tell you a lot.
Yes.
Right there. That should tell you just about everything you need to know. So, Tim, at the diner, we talk about decisions, and we talk about the motives for why we changed direction when we knew we needed to, and what motivated all that. So I'm going to ask you some questions today about, when we were in high school, you had a lab in your backyard.
Yes.
And we would go in there and you would do all kinds of experiments and things. For my listeners, also, you're seeing a little bit of scruff on me. It's Christmas time, and I'm getting the beard ready for a readings of my children's book, and we'll probably do a little spot on that later. Anyway, so we had this. You had this lab, and we'd go mess with things, and you were going to be a scientist.
Yes.
Tell us about your thoughts there. Where were you going? What did you want to do?
Well, I became interested in science pretty much in elementary school. Fifth and then sixth grade, it kind of really took off my interest. And I think I had difficulty learning to read. And I had a tutor teaching me how to read when I was in elementary school.
Okay.
To help me improve my reading skill. And one of the set of books that we read was this a collection that I believe was done by Disney, and it focused on the space program. Warner von Braun was mentioned, and rocket science was mentioned, and all sorts of things. And even nuclear energy was mentioned in this little set of booklets. And I think that is the first time I remember being really interested in science. And I really can't remember which grade it was. I remember I was attending St. Anthony's parochial school in Longview, Texas, and that went. So it was somewhere before the fifth grade,
right?
And I had this problem reading even up until that time, but I got tutored by the principal of Bramlett Elementary.
How did that happen? Bramlett was in our neighborhood, and
right, because my mother knew her. So
the mom factor.
Yes, the mom factor. So I would come home from.
And your mother was not somebody to contend with.
That is
your mother was. If your mother wanted some help, she got it.
That's right. So I would come home from St. Anthony's and then walk right outside my. Actually, at that point, no, I wasn't that. I could actually ride my bike over to Bramlett.
Right.
And
right by my house, practically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would go there, and I think her name was Richter. But anyway, she tutored me in reading, and that's where I first got a taste for science. And as I went through school and really got into high school, it basically went into high gear. And my senior year, I was up to physics. I had taken biology, chemistry, and then physics, and I got it in my head that I was going to be a nuclear physicist. Uh, well, so I was cruising that direction.
Right.
I went to a school in upstate New York called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and that's where I hit the wall because up there I was in the company of some very smart people who were well accomplished and way brighter than I was, and I sophomore year I hit something called the Schrodinger equation, and that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I switched from being a physics major to a math major.
Ah.
And I basically parlayed that math major or that math degree into a computer programming job.
Okay.
And so that basically took me out of the science track and more into the business track.
Well, let me interrupt for just a second. So, you had you had a heart for science. You wanted to be involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about this decision to change to math. I mean, I know that you hit an intellectual challenge that you felt like you could not meet as well as all those guys around you that had gone to tougher high schools, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that how much of a compromise was that for you?
I did not feel like a compromise. It felt like a way to move forward
Okay.
and to do something that I did have a gift for.
Mm-hmm.
And that that turned doing what I had a gift for really turned out well for the rest of my life.
Right. Did you know that? I mean, you knew that you were competent there,
Yes.
but did what and that turned into a passion, or it just turned into something that worked really well and you were enjoying yourself?
So I'm not sure that I experience passion the way that other people do. So
Okay.
I have very low key passion, if there is passion in there, and it's like my guiding principle for life is I want to have fun. And
There you go.
and when I hit the wall in physics, I wasn't having fun anymore. So when I switched over and became a math major, I was having fun again.
Okay. All right. Well, then what did that lead you to professionally? I mean, I know that you had a stint in the Army in the midst of all that. Do you
Yes.
have any interest in talking about that? Because one of the
Sure.
things that you said to me, and I would like to, if you're willing to go there, you want
Yeah.
can,
I'll
one of
go
the things that you,
anywhere. Yeah. I'm
if it's
unashamed.
fun.
I don't care. So
Well, I just want.
yes, I know what you're talking about. So what happened to me was I ended up flunking out of college in my junior year. So
I didn't realize you were that far along.
I was that far along. Junior year, I flunked out of college. The same year that I flunked out of college, my father died.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result of my father's death, what that did for me was it delayed my entry into the Army. I was going to be drafted immediately after I lost my S1 deferment.
And we were in the middle of the Vietnam War.
And we were, yes.
Yeah.
So, so what
I would not
happened?
think that you would. I would not think that you would consider rice patties fun.
No, I knew that they were not fun.
And so you've had your arc trajectory changed for you.
Yes.
So continue with your story.
So I I got an additional deferment compassionate deferment for 6 months. And that meant that basically, instead of being drafted in 1971, I was drafted in 1972. And what happened in that 6 month interim was politics. Uh, the What happened was, due to political pressures, President Nixon signed an executive order that draftees would not be required to go to Vietnam. They would only go to Vietnam if they volunteered to go to
Good
Vietnam.
timing.
So I was well equipped to not volunteer. I had all the skills necessary to not volunteer, and I used them
Right.
to not volunteer. So as a result, in August of 72, I went into the Army, went through processing at Fort Polk, and did the basic training, which
And you told me that you enjoyed it.
I did. I was 21 years old. Everybody else was 18. So I was the old man in the troop. And I looked around and I just observed the situation. And what happened was there was a lot of yelling in basic training, and a lot of people were apparently upset by the yelling. And I just noticed that, there was yelling and then there was push-ups. And I thought, well, so there's yelling and then push-ups. The only consequence to the yelling was at the end of the yelling, there would be push-ups. And I thought, I could use some upper body strength. So I easily endured the yelling, and it did amuse me that there was all these folks who were getting upset by being yelled at. And there was this game in basic training was the way that training was done was they let the soldiers kind of just behave as they would normally behave until they ran into a rule. And the rule would be learned after the yelling was over. And the push-ups were done. And then the rule was learned, and you learned, that's the way you learned in basic training was, oh, you broke a rule, you did the push-ups, okay, we won't do that again. Yeah. And, once I figured that out within the first 15 minutes of being there. So I was not concerned about breaking the rules because I knew the only consequence was doing push-ups. There was nothing going to go on my record. I wasn't going to go to jail because I ran into a rule and did the push-ups. So I just had a different perspective than the other young people there going through basic training. And I do recall that one drill sergeant asked me why I was smiling, and I said, "I'm just so happy I didn't enlist for this bullshit." And he just shook his head and walked away. I was expecting to get some push-ups.
Yeah. Yeah. When you've got their number, they react a little differently.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get out of basic and they put you somewhere.
Yes.
What went into that decision? I know you didn't, but they did.
I don't know why they did not. They decided to not train, to not waste any more money on me. They decided not to train me. They decided to give me OJT, on the job training, so I could type. So they made me a clerk.
Okay.
And I started out being what amounted to I was in the HR department because I maintained the records of enlisted soldiers, and not the officers, but just the enlisted, the private through master sergeant or sergeant major. So anyway, I did that for my first, I think, 7 or so months in the Army.
Did you have any fun?
I had a lot of fun. I did, because the person that controls the life of the enlisted soldier is the first sergeant of the unit, and I had access to the first sergeant's personnel records, so they left me alone.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And then there was an interesting development that came up about that time, as I recall.
There was. At about the 7-month mark, something happened at a different post. A pretty big cache of M16 rifles were stolen from an arms room. I forget which post it happened at, but it sent a shockwave through the Army. And the solution that was applied Army-wide was that that arms rooms everywhere on post had to be guarded 24 hours. So you would have the normal people who were there, kind of 8 to 5. And then after that, there would be 3 soldiers assigned to do rotating 2-hour duties of arms rooms guard. That
so you were working 2 out of 6?
Huh?
You were working 2 out of 6 in an overnight?
Yes.
There were 3 of you?
There were 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did each did.
It doesn't sound like hard duty.
We did 2 hours at a time, and it rotated.
Right. No, I mean, it sounds boring, but it doesn't sound hard.
It was the only hard part was staying awake. That was hard on me. Losing sleep was hard on me. And, and I discovered
because that's part of the fun, right?
That made it less fun. I was having a good time. I really was having a good time up until arms room guard happened, and then it quit being fun. And I became aware of another MO.
Let me ask you something. Let me jump in.
Yeah.
Was that in addition to continuing to be a clerk, or you quit being a clerk and you were just a guard 2 hours out of 6?
Oh no, I had my regular duty. So yes, I was a clerk, a records clerk, and then when at 5 o'clock when it was time to go home, I didn't go home. I went to guard the arms room. Now this was not every day. It was on a schedule. I think I probably did arms room guard twice a week.
Okay.
Because there were enough enlisted soldiers that and they had a big enough pool that I did.
So it was an unpleasant additional duty that you had to do from time to time.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But I discovered there was an MOS that didn't have to do it, and it was another clerk job.
Okay.
And that was being a chaplain's assistant.
Okay. Keep talking.
And I discovered that one of the chaplain's assistants was getting out of the Army. So he would be leaving a vacancy there. So I went and I applied for the job. And
did you do anything more than just apply? Did you talk to the priest? Did you?
It wasn't a priest that I spoke to. It was a Protestant minister. The chapel that I interviewed at did both Protestant and Catholic services at that chapel.
And you had been raised Catholic, so you were familiar with a lot of the
and I had done altar boy bit, so I was familiar with Catholic stuff.
Yeah.
And I ended up being assigned to a Catholic chaplain who was there.
Okay.
So that basically meant that I had to change the unit that I was assigned to accept that position. And after I was, so I was there as an E1 private. I hadn't received any promotions or anything. I was kind of laying low because I found out that there were certain requirements that the Army had. There were certain thresholds where if you made it to a certain thing and a certain point in time and you hadn't been promoted, they had to kick you out.
Ooh.
And so every time one of those came up, I'd say, "Hey, you haven't promoted me. I need to go." And they'd say, "Oh, we did promote you." And sure enough, they would backdate it and I would be promoted. But I was trying hard not to be promoted so that I could be,
So you enjoyed being a clerk, and now you're a chaplain's assistant.
Yes.
And tell me about the fun you had there.
That,
you made that fun.
Not having arms room guard was a lot of fun in itself. And right. The life of a chaplain's assistant is pretty mundane. There's plenty of free time to do other stuff, and we did that. Those of us who were chaplain's assistants, I was there with 3 other people. So there were a total of 4 chaplain's assistants there. And after I was there I say I was a private, an E1 private. And later, I think it was at 12 months, they did promote me to E2 because they had to keep me in the Army. So I was an E2, and there were these other folks there who were E3s and E4s, and they put me in charge.
The old man factor again.
But the old man factor.
We'll return to Tim telling his story, but first, this. Back at the opening of the show, I told you that I was growing this beard because it's Christmas season, and I do presentations in churches, and I've got a video that I have made of that for the churches I can't get to personally. Because about 30 years ago, I wrote this little book called The Keeper at the End. My kids had come home from Sunday school and talking about this mean old innkeeper, and when I asked them why they thought he was mean, they said, well, he wouldn't let Jesus' mom and dad have a room, stuck them in a stable, and I said, what if he put them in his very favorite place? They didn't have any idea how that could be. So I wrote this story to show how he could have been a very nice guy, actually be putting them in his very favorite and most private place after he realized that, he didn't have any room and they had no place else to go. It works well for children. Children love this story, but it's adults that are most impacted by it. And that's because all of us have been stuck in a situation that we didn't like and had to make a choice that was less than ideal. But we all tried to make the best of it. And this book is a good example of that. Now, the way that it works is the book comes with a CD of me reading the story that a child can follow along with. But since so many people don't even have CD players anymore, I also include in every book a link to the audiobook version and to the video of me telling the story. So there's several different ways that it can be consumed. 10 of these in a case are $100. People donate them to their Sunday school class because it's a complete Sunday school class in itself. You got the video, you got the book, and if the kids carry those home with them, then they can always be led through it by the audio that they can link to with any smart device. So if you're interested in these, they're available through the Christmas season, but I need about a week to get it to you. If you want to book me, if you're in the Valdosta area or within 100 miles, there's information on how to do that also. And the link is go to bit.ly/keeper story. But capitalize the K and the S. It's all one word though. That's bit.ly/K, keeper, capital S, story. And all one word, no spaces. That's what this is all about. And now we're going to get back to Tim's story. We'll pick it up where we left off.
And there were these other folks there who were E3s and E4s, and they put me in charge.
The old man factor
They
again.
put the old man factor. I don't know that I was any smarter or any more experienced than them, but
Well,
they put me in
I
charge.
while I appreciate your self-deprecation, I was around before you were that age, and you've always been organized and kind of had a level head on your shoulders. I know you departed from that some in college, but yeah, I could see you getting promoted. I could see you getting there. But so what happened then?
People would come
Well,
in for counseling with the ministers that were there, the chaplains that were assigned to the unit, uh,
right.
and there were Sunday services. We all rotated taking the Sunday services. The one thing that chaplain assistants had to do was work on the weekends. So we I set up a schedule where everybody just worked 5 days a week, and they would. I was pretty democratic about letting folks pick their own schedules and when they were going to be on and when they were going to be off, and so we would have to be there for also for evening events. For example, there was choir practice because a number of these services had choirs. Uh, and there would be, I think it was on Wednesday nights, there were choirs
Yeah.
that would practice in the chapel. Uh, and there were other events that happened in the chapel, like weddings and things like that would go on. And an assistant would have to, open the building and cover those events. So
Still sounds like pretty light duty.
it was very, very light duty. Uh, and as none of us, while we were there, ever took leave.
Hmm.
So, but there was a lot of time off.
Yeah. Sounds great. So you get out of the army, and I mean, let's just jump to the next big change.
Okay.
The next, how did that come about? Did the clock run out, or did you do something?
So, well, the clock eventually ran out because I was only supposed to be in the Army for 2 years. And the 2 years finished up. And I had reapplied to RPI to
Right.
get back in and finish my degree. And I was accepted. So, and they told me, you got to make these grades, etc., or you're again. So I said, I think I can do it this time. So I went back to RPI, and I was extraordinarily motivated, and for the first time in my life, made the dean's list twice.
Wow.
In my last 2 semesters there, I made the dean's list, and in the meantime, going back to Fort Bliss. One of these choir practices, I did meet a young lady that I became interested in, and that I'm now married to that young lady and have been for 46 years. And
there's just a whole bevy of other human beings that have been produced as a result of that.
Yes. So that's, I got, my flunking out of college had me meet my future spouse and make several children, and now we have 3 children and 3 grandchildren.
When did you get married in the course of this? Did you get the degree and then how did it work?
Yes. So I got out of the Army in 1974. And immediately, so I got out in August 28th. I'm sorry, 27th. I got out August 27th and flew directly from El Paso to Troy, New York.
Right.
And went basically right back to college. Because college was starting up then. I don't know that I had already arranged for my dorm room and taking care of the tuition, etc. So I went straight back, got out of the Army, got my final pay, and whoosh, I was off.
When during that period of time did you start thinking about what you were going to do professionally?
Now, that's a great question because I don't think I did think about professionally. I was so focused on finishing my degree at RPI. I
And hitting
really
those
did.
numbers.
I really did not think about what I was going to do with this math degree. It was
Wow.
first of all, get the math degree, and the rest of life will take care of itself. I mean, that was my attitude. It wasn't something to be worried about. I had to focus on get the degree, because if I don't do that, the other options aren't there. And that's basically what I did. Was I focused on the degree, and what I was going to do with the degree never occurred to me.
Well, and I don't think that attitude has changed much for you. Things are going to, things will take care of themselves. Stuff will happen and we'll react to it.
Right.
Yeah. So you get the degree and you
Yeah.
can't live in the dorm anymore. So does it now occur to you, gee, maybe I ought to get a job?
Yeah. So I spent about a week visiting relatives and friends right after graduation. Well, I should say right after finals. I didn't go to graduation. I just I knew I was going to get my diploma in the mail, and that was good enough for me. So
send me the ticket when you get around to it. Right.
That's right. So I went and visited friends, and then I went back to El Paso because one thing that I did while I was going to college was I got engaged. So I got engaged. So I had this fiance who was interested in me being around. So I went. I went back to El Paso, and it's interestingly, Vivian and I have graduated the same year. I just started 3 years before she did.
Yeah.
So she was a fresh graduate. I was a fresh graduate, and she had already secured a job in El Paso.
Yeah, because I know she doesn't think like you.
Right.
I know that she's 6 to 12 months to 3 years ahead.
Correct.
At all times.
That's right.
And because she's doing it, you don't have to.
And that's right. I just, think of me as a race car driver who's always drafting behind Vivian.
Yeah.
That's my position. And so she got a job with a school district in El Paso, and I didn't have a job, so I went looking for a job. And it took from June until October to find me a job.
What were you looking for?
1975, I was looking for I interviewed for quite a few different jobs. My first choice was to find a position in industrial engineering because I had my major is in math, and I built kind of a minor in operations research and industrial engineering. So I went looking for an industrial engineering, and there weren't many of those jobs in El Paso. Right. And I had no experience, so there was no one interested in hiring a kid straight out of college. But I did find a job programming. So I became a COBOL programmer for the county of El Paso.
Okay. And you found a way to enjoy that.
I did. I had fun. It was...
it is your life mission after all.
It is. and it is... It was definitely something new. When I think about programming, I think of what I was doing was writing instructions for a moron. It's like, hey, moron, can you do this? just follow these instructions. And sometimes the machine informs you back that, oh no, you're the moron. But but part of the fun is to get those clues that, oh, maybe I'm the moron this time. And debugging programs was had a certain amount of fun to it.
Well, yeah, it's a logic.
It was
puzzle.
like to me, it was like if I were doing Sudoku puzzles all day long, because it's just a puzzle as to, you got to get these instructions in the correct order and the correct instructions, and a typo will blow everything up.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have intended something else, but you do a typo and
was this still in the card days when you
oh,
typed,
yes, very much so. In the punch card days, 80 columns and
and every column had to be exactly right.
Yeah.
And the cards had to be in the right order.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You spill the card deck, you're into trouble for a while.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I remember those days. So next, you evolved a little bit from that, though, and somehow or another got interested in accounting.
So what happened was I got promoted from being a programmer to being a systems analyst, which meant that I was meeting with the department heads and finding out what their needs were and finding out if we could solve their problems with a computer system.
Yeah.
And in those days, it was pretty rudimentary. There wasn't terminals. Computer terminals were not widespread in 1975. They just weren't. There were a few around, but there wasn't this idea of you can enter data.
PCs didn't even happen for another 5 years.
Right. So there wasn't this, entering data directly into a computer. It was basically copy something down, punch it into a punch card, and enter the information that way.
Right.
And that was, that's the extent of the systems at that time. So I did kind of look for something else to do. I was having fun, but I thought I might have more fun if I had an MBA. So the University of Texas at El Paso was local, and I enrolled and started taking all of these business courses. I had not taken a single business course throughout my college career, not one. So I was taking finance and accounting and marketing and management and all of these courses that a business graduate would have taken. I took those, economics, and for the first time in my life, it was easy to be a 4.0 student. I got, when I at UTEP, for all of my business classes, including accounting, I had straight A's, and not low A's, high A's.
What story do you tell yourself about that? Why was that?
It was the first time that I ran into a subject that I seemed to have native intelligence for. I mean, other people were struggling with concepts of assets and liabilities, and it just clicked with me.
Sure.
I had, I was, befuddled by why they were having problems with this, what I thought was really simple.
And it's a lot more fun to do something effortlessly than to study hard at it.
Yes. And I really
be good at it.
I mean, I went all the way. I took every accounting course that UTEP offered and aced them all.
Wow.
I mean, really, it was phenomenal how easy it was for me, and I was um, uh, I was revered in class. It was like that's a new one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, people knew me and knew to come to me for help. I had native intelligence for it, and uh, that I guess made it fun. Now,
Yeah.
I did not at that point in time get an MBA. I just took all of these business classes. I did participate in some recruiting that was being done on campus by various companies, and uh, before I got any other degrees besides my math degree, I got recruited by Arthur Young and Company uh, here in Austin.
It sounds like a fit. Yeah.
So now Arthur Young and Company was one of the quote big eight at that time, and it had three divisions: audit, tax, and consulting. And I was recruited by the consulting division to basically do IT consulting.
Yeah.
And basically, they weren't really interested in my extra education. They were interested in my programming and design skills.
Right.
So I took that job in Austin, and Vivian and I moved to Austin.
My take on all this, because you and I have been through bits and pieces of that, but not chronologically.
Yeah.
We haven't walked through it. And a common theme that I'm finding is path of least resistance.
Yes.
And sense of achievement, and whatever you get stuck in, find a way to have fun at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that I know that continues to be the case because I've been across America. There's only 40 miles of I-10 that we haven't covered
Yeah.
together. And that was because it took a hurricane to get us off that path.
Yes.
Um, so the audience for this show are people who are at a place where they're making a decision. Unlike you, a gigantic majority of people start on a path that was urged upon them by parents or family or in your case, kind of circumstance would make, and without your skill at making anything fun, they find themselves on a path that's not feeding their spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the diner is about getting some counsel on what to look to when you've got a choice, when you're in a place that you don't want to be, or no longer is fulfilling that. How do you sort through? What kind of counsel would you give to a high school graduate who is contemplating college, trade school, building a business, whatever, a college graduate, or just a person who's, because you've managed people in a number of companies. You're a CFO for one, so
Mm-hmm.
you had people you worked with that are at these crossroad places. What is your philosophy about making those decisions?
I've explained to a number of people who've sought my counsel about, and I've given, especially those who were interested in following accounting.
Right.
And I had a great deal of luck in my pursuits. I mean, it's not often that someone who flunks out of college gets a job with a big eight accounting firm. But somehow I was impressive enough, or goofy enough, or silly enough, or something enough to interest the folks at Arthur Young to give me a shot. And
that's a great pedigree to have behind you
yeah.
as you move on.
So uh, I was always reticent to give advice because I had experienced so much luck.
Right.
I had, and I,
So your counsel is be lucky.
I just, I recovered. I don't know if I have some special skill to recover from disaster. I mean, flunking out of college is a disaster. Being fired from a job is a disaster, and yet I seem to come out okay all the time. And
this is a very good point.
I don't know how to tell people how to do that, because
right.
It seems that it is something that is it's an invisible, to me it's an invisible skill, and I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where,
having lived outside of you for as many years as I have, one of the things that is impressive about you that an observer notices right away is that you're pretty much unflappable. Things happen and you stop and think about, well, what's this going to do to my fun factor? and you start looking for answers. And because you're not distracted by panic and things like that, options appear to you more quickly because you're ready for them. And I think that would come across somewhat. And if I was Arthur Young, and I'm looking for a person who logical, can solve problems, has some skills, I would notice that in you pretty quickly. It isn't luck. You were lucky that the person that was interviewing had some awareness, but also you've had that. Commenting on the disasters happened, but they didn't stop you.
right.
They intrigued you more than anything. You're like, wonder what happened. What did I do now?
Yeah.
So I think interpreting from your commentary and your story, I think the best advice for following a Tim Ferchill in the world is roll with it, get up, know that the sun's coming up the next day, and start looking at your assets and liabilities and sort through those and try to use them.
Well said. I agree with that. I do. I think that, thinking back on the story I just told you about being in basic training and noticing there was yelling and push-ups and learning lessons, that's probably the pattern that I adopted for the rest of my life. Is like, okay, stuff's going to happen, and it's not the end of the world until it is.
Right. Well, and you do have excellent pattern recognition skills. You noticed the action, the consequence, and you went, okay, I got this game figured out. And you did that in the first 15 minutes on base. So on post. So it's good for you. We are sitting here at having had a really, really good time. And I always love talking with you. I don't think that you can drive across America talking to someone for 8 or 10 days and not know how to have fun with it. So
yeah,
thanks for this little trip. I appreciate you joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we have crazy people on the diner all the time. Tim's just one of them. And if you know somebody that's got a great story that probably ought to be unpacked and is inspiring in some way, contact us, and we'd love to track that down, follow that lead. So Tim, thanks for being on the diner.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Connect with us at the Crossroad Diner at StoryMasterMedia.com. That's Crossroad Diner at StoryMasterMedia.com. If you've got a story or a friend who has one, have them reach out to us at the diner, where your spirit goes when it's time to change direction. Next up on the diner, the keeper at the end.